Hey, Ben, can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Then I'll jump right in. It's because I believe that having more choices in healthcare is always a better option. Having more competition in the market is always a good thing. That I support the resolution today that Trump's healthcare executive order will do more good than harm. I want to go in and define what the executive order was, specifically by summarizing the three things that it did. The three things that it did were this. The first thing is it allowed interstate healthcare insurance commerce to be sold. In other words, it allows you, if you live in Tennessee, to purchase an insurance health plan from a company that is in Texas, where previously under Obamacare that was not allowed. Secondly, it allowed for customized health insurance plans to be sold across states. Under Obamacare, there were minimum requirements under health insurance plans that required all health insurance providers to sell certain things without any sort of customization. This allows for customization. And the third thing is it allowed for short-term insurance plans to be sold. A short-term insurance plan is a policy that is not a lifetime policy, but one for maybe 6 months or so if you say we're in between jobs. Now, we understand, I think, what it is, so I want to offer a couple different reasons for why I think this is a good thing. Because I believe that the one-size-fits-all solution that was offered under Obamacare was costly, incongruous, and bad policy. A customized choice with more competition is always superior. The first thing is that opening competition is good for the market. Right now, if you live in a state, you are limited by the fact that you are limited to the insurance plans in that market. This allows for more people to purchase the more efficient and cheaper products across the nation. Meaning, if you're in Tennessee and you have bad health insurance plans and Texas has great ones, you now have access to those great health insurance plans. The second thing that is good about it is the customizable aspect of these plans. If insurance was sold across state lines, consumers would have more options. This means that they would be able to more likely find a plan best suited to their personal needs. For example, benefits that are mandated in some states, like drug rehab or acupuncture or maternity leave, may raise the premium cost of plans by 30 to 50% and are controversial. If I'm a 30-year-old single dude, I don't need to pay insurance for maternity because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be having a kid. Unfortunately, under Obamacare, that's required. Which means that I don't have any option in how I can actually end up paying for that sort of thing. So the existence of customized plans means that you can actually lower the overall cost of your insurance by not purchasing the things that you don't need. The third thing that it does, it specifically helps small businesses. Under Obamacare, the percentage of workers at small firms receiving coverage to their employer declined by nearly half from 2010 to one third in 2017. They face skyrocketing premiums and a lack of choices. Specifically because if you're a small business and let's say you only have 5 employees and you have to pay all of the benefits for a particular person, if one person gets a life-threatening disease, your company will go under because you'll have to pay all of that ability. What this does is this allows small businesses across the country to come together under one larger insurance policy and one that fits them more appropriately, allows them to have a cheaper product, and allows them to have a more efficient product. I'll go ahead and pass the mic.
All right. So the first thing, also, can you hear me? Excellent. Right. So the first thing is that buying across state lines also means that you get to sell across state lines. And think about the way in which what companies are motivated to do. These insurance companies are not motivated to cover people; they're motivated to make money. And think to the way in which, for example, when you introduce tax havens, how businesses all flee to tax havens. The reason they do that is because businesses follow the path of least resistance. So what my opponent wants you to think when he says more choice is that the insurance market will remain the same way it is now, where there'll just be great plans in all different areas. But actually what's going to happen is that businesses, now that they can sell to the entire country from a particularly friendly state, will just relocate all of their business to that state. So for what are they going to relocate based on? They'll relocate to states with the lowest minimum coverage standards. They'll relocate to states with the lowest consumer protection laws. They'll relocate to states with the friendliest courts. Maybe they're stacked out with Republicans who are appointed by Trump, or maybe they've just got the best precedent law and have it like a record of when there are consumer versus insurance conflicts of ruling in favor of the insurance company. That means that more choice doesn't exist in this debate because it assumes that the insurance offering market, or the selling market, will remain static, where obviously now that insurance companies can sell across state lines, it won't be, which means that consumers actually get less choice and they get worse choices. Next thing is about how the healthy will flee the system. Premiums only ever go down for two reasons. Either, and this is what the customization is, a bit of a euphemism my opponent is using. One, either the pool of people gets less riskier because there are less people who are claiming period, or the things that they claim a period, which is, where Republicans often say rationing, this is what rationing is, right? This is where the insurance plans now cover less and less things, right? Which means that they are more and more useless because people get sick with those things. It's not just about maternity leave for men. It's also about things like cancer coverage. So it's also about things like workplace injury. And what this means is that when you get employers buy, and it's not a normal market, for example, where insurance companies will have to compete out to get it. Because one, as my opponent employers are buying them, right? So the employers don't necessarily care about covering every single need of their employee. Maybe if there was like full employment and people were literally choosing their jobs based on health plans, that would be the case. But in an environment right now in the US where unemployment is a huge problem for people and people can't afford to shoot between jobs, that's not an option. Also, that when people are sick with these things, they're the least able to advocate for their rights because they're already financially burdened by the fact that they are sick and their insurance company is not covering them, so their legal protections are at an all-time low. Next thing was on short-term health plans. Short-term health plans basically are a huge giveaway to insurance companies because it allows them to reassess the risk of their patients every time the plan runs out, right? Which is why only healthy people buy them. At the point where they become sick and actually need the insurance, suddenly you've got a pre-existing condition, you have to sign up for a long-term plan. Oops, you're disqualified from them too. So short-term health plans are just a massive giveaway. I'm going to also move on to other points later, but for now I'll pass it back to my phone.
I'll ask you a question. It seems like to me, with the exception of the first argument you made, all of your arguments stem from this notion that if people are given the ability to choose things, they will choose bad things for themselves. So my question for you is this: should people be allowed to choose a health plan that is more risky and cheaper, or should they be required to pay a specific amount and have X amount of coverage?
No, that's not what I said. What I said is that the choices they will be offered will be more limited, right? So they will choose things and they'll choose bad things for themselves because they are now being offered less bad things because the companies are fleeing to states, for example, which will have lower minimum standards. It's a bit of a two-way thing.
Cool. But to be clear, you think that individuals should be allowed to buy customizable health plans, yes or no?
Again, it depends what you mean by customizable. And generally, again, you're going to have to qualify that. What does customizable mean in this circumstance?
Yeah, so I'll qualify it then. So like right now, under certain federal laws, there are requirements, there are minimum standards for all health plans, meaning all health plans have to cover X, Y, and Z things. Certain states, like I mentioned earlier, require you to pay insurance for drug rehab, acupuncture, and maternity. So my question is, should people be allowed to opt out of certain things that they are not at risk of and accept customizable plans, or do you support 100% bans on that ability?
They are not allowed to customize in that manner. And it's pretty clear why, right? Like you can't opt out of having the FDA approve the foods, right? Even though it might lower your costs. You can't approve of, like, for example, oh, look, I just want to go to the doctor with no medical license, right? Because he charges less. No. The state imposes minimum standards for consumer protection all of the time. And what those standards should be, right? Whether maternity leave should be in there, should be the subject of a democratic conversation where the majority and their representatives in Congress decide what is in there. But you can't allow individuals to do that precisely because when only the healthier people opt for the plans of the least and least coverage, that means that the risk pool, the amount of risk and the amount of things covered for everyone else is now for the insurance companies far more expensive. So you get the healthiest people who, by the way, did not earn their health, right? Young people have done nothing to deserve the fact that they get less sick than old people, other than the fact that they have virtue of their youth, right? That means that they get to shove everyone else, right, who did nothing to deserve their sicknesses with higher premiums, even though they're the ones who honestly need it just because they're trying to save money in the short term. That is why, no, customizable health plans in that case are completely unacceptable.
Okay, so we disagree on principle here. I actually don't support President Trump. I'm not even a Republican. But we do disagree on principle here. Your notion and the principle that you've offered in this debate is that the government is the one that should be responsible for making sure that people are healthy. And my argument here is that the government has done that under Obamacare, and it's been a failure because it's skyrocketed premiums for small businesses, it's skyrocketed premiums for people that are healthy, and it's overall hurt healthcare more than it's actually helped it. My argument here is very simple. Choice and the ability and the freedom to customize a health plan is an inherently good thing by denying the benefits of the order. So I think I'm gonna win on the principle level, just on the notion that people should be able to choose what healthcare they have. But secondly, I think I'm also going to win on the net beneficial level. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the arguments that you made in response to that. The first thing is you talk about how they're going to relocate to a state because it means cheaper care because of tax havens, lower standards, et cetera, et cetera. My response is this is absolutely okay because this means you get passed on benefits to the consumer. If a state requires less taxes on health insurance, guess who gets the benefit of those less taxes? The consumer, because it means they can charge lower prices and beat out the other companies. This is why having more competition and having more diversity in the insurance pool is a good thing. Lower taxes, if everybody moves to the state, let's say Texas has the lowest health insurance taxes. If everybody moves to Texas, that means that premiums are now going to be cheaper for the consumer, which is a good thing. And remember, it's not only cheaper for the people in Texas, it's cheaper for everybody across the United States because you're allowed to purchase them across state lines now. This means increased competition, it means lower premiums. The second argument you made is that it gets riskier because they cover less and less things. Here's the difference. We're not forcing people to cover less things. We're saying now they should have the ability to offer a health plan that covers less and less things. Of course, if people would like a health plan that covers more stuff, the demand and there's an actual great enough demand for that, then health insurance plans will provide it. But if all 30-year-old men don't want don't want their premiums to go up because their maternity expense, because they have maternity insurance, then they should have the ability to purchase that on an individual basis. So your argument that it's going to get it's going to get riskier because they're going to cover less things is not necessarily true. It only depends on what the market requires. If there are people that want only that, then that would be the case. But we know for a fact that there are some people that want plans that cover everything. And then we also know for a fact that there are some people that are in between jobs who want small health insurance plans as well. So it's going to be a mixed bag. In order for you to prove this argument, you have to show that it will be true that there will be no options that are large and no options that cover everything, which I don't think you have the ability to prove. We didn't have that before Obamacare was passed. We had health plans that covered everything. We had health plans that covered some things. The last thing is a short-term health plan that's bad. I don't think short-term health plans are bad at all. They specifically help people who are in between jobs, who are impoverished, and who need it the most. The people who don't have jobs now can't get it through their employer, and they can't afford a long-term health insurance plan, which means that if they get sick, they're screwed because they have no health insurance to cover them. Under your world, those people who are in between jobs and poor don't have an alternative.
Okay. First thing I'm just going to ask you is that if you think that people should only ever pay for the things which directly affect them, then why do you want insurance at all? Why not just do away with the insurance market totally and have people buy things at the point in which they get sick?
I'm not saying insurance is bad. I'm saying forcing people to have insurance is bad. Obviously, insurance is great. Like I pay car insurance because I know that it's cheaper for me to pay car insurance than it would be if I got in a wreck and I hurt myself or hurt somebody else, right? But that's a choice that I have. I'm not saying that it's always bad for you to pay for other people's stuff in an insurance setting. What I am saying is it's always bad to force people and coerce people into doing that, especially when it jacks them over because they have to pay ridiculously high premiums and can't afford it. Look, you haven't addressed the fact that small businesses under Obamacare have been absolutely screwed and torched. People who are in between jobs have been absolutely screwed and torched. And this specific plan fixes those problems.
Okay, the problem is that when you start to make this on principle that you shouldn't be coerced into paying for other people's stuff, the reason it is cheaper for you to get car insurance than pay for when your car fucks up is that all of the people who didn't crash, even though you did, are paying for you with your premiums. The very point of insurance is that people pay for things which don't directly affect them because you spread the risk out amongst all people. So if you accept that as a principle, right, then you can't go around and say, but people should be able to just opt out of little bits of the risk because that is always by principle good. Because then the logical ad absurdum of that point is that people should never be compelled to pay any risk for anyone else, should never have to pay premiums on behalf of other people's services, right? Because, they got sick and I didn't. Why should I have to pay for their sickness? So your point is in tension with the very existence of insurance itself. Okay, first thing you said was that selling across state lines is good because when you go to the state that lowers taxes, it lowers premiums. Yes, but it also raises premiums when you go, for example, to the states with the lowest minimum standards of coverage or the states with the friendliest court and the lowest consumer protection laws, right? So obviously there's two sides to this. That having very low consumer protection laws and extremely low minimum standards around your coverage is far more impactful to your premiums than small tax differences. The next thing is that you were talking about how premiums have gone up under Obamacare. Again, the premiums were going up under George Bush's era anyway. You would need to prove the impossible provable thing that premiums have gone up at a steeper rate than they would have otherwise in the counterfactual where Obamacare was never implemented, which I think is ludicrous. And I invite the proof which you're going to put there. The next thing you were talking about was that I need to prove. I forgot that. You can remind me later. Also short-term plans, right? The short-term plans exist under both sides. Before Trump cared, they were just like a month, right? The amount which is realistic for in-between jobs, and you could repurchase them month to month. When you extend them to about a year, then they lose their utility as short-term plans. They just become the plan you buy, where you renew it every single year. What's the problem with this? The problem is that insurance companies have an incentive to offer low premiums for these plans, and it actually isn't too much of an imposition on someone to say, look, you want to repurchase your plan every year. But at the point where they actually become sick and they want to renew their plan, the insurance company's like, well, too late, too bad, bud, right? You opted into this short-term plan where we reserve the right every year to refuse your custom, right? And that's what will happen. And that's why short-term things are bad. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're going to say that consumers should be absolutely responsible for every single thing they buy, then that will require you to do away with every single form of consumer protection which exists. No more FDA, no more regulations around how long meat can be stored before the supermarkets have to throw it out. No more regulations about what sort of professions qualifications doctors and service providers have to have before they sell your service, right? Because what those things are is the state recognizing that it's too much for consumers to have to think about all this shit all of the time and need consumer protection. This is just a simple case. We turn this debate to a simple case of whether consumer protection.
No, my position isn't even that all consumer protection is bad. My specific case is arguing that the healthcare insurance under Obamacare and the consumer protection, quote unquote, that it requires is bad because it's not consumer protection. It's not protection when small businesses can no longer afford insurance because they can't buy it across state lines. It's not protection. It's not protection when people who are in between jobs who are impoverished can't afford health insurance. That's not protection whatsoever. So we have kind of two debates that are happening here, Ben. We have a principled one. We have one on the principled argument, and we also have one on the net beneficial argument. And I think I'm winning on both. The first argument is the principled one. Here's the notion that I'm arguing. My argument is that people who are individuals shouldn't be forced to pay for things for insurance that's not going to apply to them. People who cannot afford to pay for drug rehab insurance premiums and acupuncture premiums and maternity premiums should not be able to do it. What happens when you inflate the cost of health insurance premiums? It means less people get them. That's exactly what happened under Obamacare, and that's why less and less people are having health insurance and why premiums are going up. I mean, the notion that we can't look at Obamacare and say premiums are going up because of Obamacare is ridiculous because it's been in place for almost 8 years. And so, like, we can see specific spikes, and I have two specific studies here that I actually found that specifically quoted it. One was from Georgetown University, and one was from Mark Hall, a JD and a professor of law and public health at Wake Forest University Medical School, and several associates of his. They both found specifically that under the rigid, one-size-fits-all, incongruous policy solution that was Obamacare, it left a ton of people in the dust. And the reason is very simple. When you shut off the ability for people to purchase things across states, it means there's less competition that happens there. Here's the one principle you haven't refuted. You haven't refuted this notion that when there's more competition in a market, that means you get the most optimal, efficient care possible. You haven't refuted that argument. You haven't shown me how having more people in a marketplace is better. That's a principle that's proven true in the data, and it's a principle that's proven true on principle. So you haven't actually negated that argument. The next argument is on small health insurance plans. Your argument here is that short-term healthcare plans are bad because if it's a year-to-year thing, it becomes the norm. I mean, if somebody wants to make a decision to just continually renew the year-to-year plan because it's super ridiculously expensive to have a long-term plan, that's on them. They should have the ability to do that. The government shouldn't be the person that tells you, oh no, we don't want you to make X bad decision, and so we're going to now charge you more and more for your health insurance. We've gotten kind of away from what this debate is about. It's about three things. Should companies who are on health insurance be allowed to sell and purchase insurance across state lines? Should we allow for customized health insurance plans? And should we allow short-term insurance plan to be sold? All three of those things are inherently good on principle, and all three of those things would have a positive effect on the health insurance industry specifically. The one study I cited found that this plan specifically would reduce for individuals from 20 to 50%. That was Mark Hall, the JD at Wake Forest University Medical School, and his partner.
But the people who are covered are all healthy, and the people who can no longer afford the coverage are sick and now have no insurance. So yes, and premiums go down for healthy people who do not need, the insurance right now, but it becomes completely inaccessible for sick people. That's the problem. Okay, first thing, talk about how I haven't refuted that more competition is in the market. Wrong. Competition is contingent on you proving that the market stays the same as it is now, right? That people now have X and X plus all of the other insurance companies. But as I've told you, now that insurance companies will all flee to the states with the lowest regulations, which you admitted because you said they're going to go to the places with least taxes, means that competition is now going through the floor because there are far less insurance companies, right? Because now they're closing up shop in every state, bar the state with the friendliest regulations. Okay, next thing. Obamacare said the previous gone up. I've just looked up factcheck.org on this. Republicans say the average health insurance premium has increased by 4K under President Obama. That's right, and it is much slower rate of growth than under President Bush, right? The comparative is not on your side here. I'll post that link after the debate. Next thing said that people shouldn't be forced to pay for things they don't need. Oh, God, look, this is why consumer protections is the thing. Here's the thing. Do you think that people should have to pay for the FDA covering and checking the safety of products which they may never buy? Do you support
that? Yeah, generally speaking, I support the FDA.
Okay, so you support people having to pay for things and pay for regulations on things which they will themselves never purchase, just to be clear.
Well, I think generally speaking, people use the FDA. So mean, people purchase things that the FDA regulates. So no, I don't think people are paying for things that the FDA regulates that they don't use.
The FDA covers all foods. People do not buy all foods. So they are spending money covering things which people do not buy. What that means is that you are okay with the socialization of risk, which is what insurance is. Okay. Yes, people do not all use maternity leave or use acupuncture, but if you allow everyone to strip away all of the things which they think they don't need, one, many of them will be mistaken and actually will need it at some point, right? So, for example, when your doctor prescribes you fentanyl and you end up a druggo, something you never thought you might be, then you will need that drug rehab, which you opted out of. Or two, when someone in your family needs that. Or three, since it's your employer doing it for you via one of these association health plans, the employer will choose on behalf of their employees what they think they do and do not need. And some of those employees will need those things. And lastly, when they opt out, all of the people who do need those things, what happens to them? What happens to all of the women, for example, who do need maternity leave? Where do they go under your system? I'm passing the mic now.
Obviously, women who want to have maternity want to purchase a broad healthcare plan. That's an option that you have. But secondly, the United States is made of approximately 50% of women, which means that 50% of the people who want to have maternity would be able to pay for maternity. That's 100% acceptable. Here's the other thing. This is kind of your first argument you make, and also the last argument you make. Your argument is that when you have a small pool of people, the premium goes up. Is that your argument, right? Right. Well, I mean, that's one of your arguments, right? Okay. So here's the crucial argument that you fail to see. Right now, the pools are limited to states, meaning right now you can only have as many people in the pool as are in your state. Under this plan, the pool expands by an exponent of approximately 50 because that's how many states there are. Which means this is the crucial turn argument. If you think that more people in a pool is better, then you should absolutely allow insurance to go 100% across the United States. Because if there's a best insurance plan that the most people will flock to, that means lower premiums for everybody else. Because if I'm in Tennessee and I see there's a health insurance company in Texas, then all the people in Tennessee will flock to the one in Texas, which means now there's double the amount of people on that health insurance plan, which means lower premiums for everybody. There's a couple other arguments you. The first one is this: your only response to competition is that companies will all flock to the same state. Yes. Companies flocking to the state is not the same as all competition going away. This is exactly my point. All the companies will go to the same state and compete against each other. Your argument here doesn't make any sense. Right now, competition only exists within the state. If you open it across state lines, you open competition across every single state, meaning every single company can now offer insurance companies to everybody in the United States. The last thing here is you've conceded both the studies that I've offered, and you've also conceded the small business argument here. You specifically failed to address the numbers that I offered you. Actually, you did make the one response with Obamacare. The fact check you offered was, well, premiums went up under Bush. They're still going up under Obamacare. Okay. And my argument is that's a bad thing, and we should lower the premiums, which my plan does. So the fact that you acknowledge that Obamacare is increasing premiums is problematic, or at least that under Obamacare premiums are going up. You haven't addressed the argument that small businesses specifically would be helped by it, and I think that the argument's your stand. I'll go ahead and pass the mic.
Look, first of all, with the Obamacare thing, if premiums are going up inevitably anyway, you opt for the plan which they go up the least, which is why my study is the direct comparison of the only two options we have here. So that's why premiums are better going up at a slower rate. Okay, next thing. No, it's not about how many people are in the pool. It's about how many risky people which are likely to claim for expensive things are in the pool. As the ratio of healthy people to risky people increases, premiums go down because there are more healthy people in the pool. As the risk of, as more risky people get into the pool, premiums go up. What this plan does is it allows all of the healthy people, who I will again iterate, which you have not responded to, did nothing to deserve their health. Young people do not deserve their health because they have done nothing for it other than be young. Okay, people who get cancer didn't give themselves cancer. That was just their lot in life, right? So the people who have done nothing to deserve this consumer purchasing power will isolate themselves from the marketplace of people who are sick. And then you still have not answered what happens to the sick people, right? You said that, women are 50% of the population. Yeah, but unless you're planning on having completely gender segregated health plans, which again is intention of your idea that businesses are going to supply the health plans, unless you want to have gender segregated businesses, right? Then it does not work. At the end of the day, these association plans, these small businesses, as you said, are businesses too. They will buy the plans which are cheapest, which means shoddiest coverage, lowest consumer protection, unlikely to cover the most things, which means all of the people who need those things in those businesses lose out. That is a bad thing. The next thing you were saying is that companies will go to the same state and then they compete against each other. Well, yeah, but they also go to the same state and offer the shittiest product, right? Because if they all go to the same state where the state's regulation is, oh, look, we have friendly courts, which if there's ever a contest, you will win. Then that means that they'll just all go there and people won't even be able to claim on things they thought they deserved, right? It means that if, they go to states where the state's like, oh, you don't, have to have, minimum standards around how much you should cover or how much information you need to give to your consumers. They'll all go to that state, which means consumers lose out either way. Pass back to Mike.
I mean, like if I go to a bar and all of my friends die because they drank at the bar, I'm probably not going to go back to the bar. If a health insurance company regularly screws their people over, doesn't allow them to make claims, people will stop buying from the health insurance company. This is the nature of competition and why competition is a good thing. Because the company that does the best thing for the lowest cost is the company that wins out. All of your arguments here contingent on the fact that people will just opt for the cheapest plan. Well, no, it's not always just the cheapest plan. It's a combination of the cheapest plan with the most benefits. And under the current situation, under the status quo, as it were, right now, you are limited to the number of options that you can purchase, which means health insurance companies only have to do so much to win people's money. Under my plan, they have to do a lot more. Right now, in Tennessee, if the standards are different from in Texas, health insurance companies have to do a lot less to please the consumers. And guess what? Consumers can't go anywhere else where it's cheaper and where there's a better product. Under a competitive framework, you allow companies to compete against each other to offer both the cheapest and also the best. If a company screws people over, people will not use the company and they will go out of business. What happens to sick people, you ask? Well, they get lower plans. In the status quo, people are not able to afford health insurance. I've already cited 2 examples of where this is happening. It's happening to small businesses, and it's happening to people who are in between jobs because they don't have short-term insurance plans. Additionally, the lack of customization for healthcare overall jacks premiums up for people in general, which means, sure, we may have a safety net for a couple individuals, but the one person who has cancer, who we're able to, oh yeah, well, we'll cover your cancer, means that 10 other people can't afford to pay for the health insurance premiums that they have as a result of that. That's what's happening in the status quo. The numbers in the studies support that, I think. And so I think because of competition, I think because of the fact that health insurance plans should be customizable and small is beneficial. I think because of the fact that you've conceded the studies, and on both a principled level and a net beneficial level, I'm winning the debate.
Okay, I haven't considered studies. I offered a counter study, which he admits is true. Okay, next thing. You said, look, they have to do the best, right? The best is relative to what else is on offer. If every insurance company is offering a dodgy product, as is the status quo, by the way, as you admit, that every insurance company's premiums are unaffordable, then that shows that if it's in the financial interest of the consumer, of the insurance companies to have high prices and low coverage, that is what they will do. By your own logic, the market should currently be solving for the problem, right? Because if no one can afford it, then a new one should just enter the state. States are pretty big, right? You haven't really given me the analysis as to why, the state of Texas is unable to support a good insurance company plan. Next thing as well is that it'll always be the minimum who suffer. The reason your bar analogy doesn't work is because when you sign up for insurance, you don't know the other people who are on that insurance company. So when the minimum gets screwed over, you're fine because you didn't get sick. That's the problem here, is that people never see the costs which the insurance company they're buying to imposes on people's lives. And that is why they will silently keep on paying for slightly cheaper premiums in exchange for people not being able to be covered at all or not getting coverage because the courts are friendly or because they won't cover for things in the first place. Okay, the other thing when you're talking about like Texas versus Tennessee, you're assuming that these insurance companies will act against their own interests and gravitate to the ones which are best for consumers. No, obviously they're businesses. Insurance companies will gravitate to the states which is best for them, right? Which is why they will gravitate to states where they have to cover the least things, have to cover the least sick people, and that is why it is bad for those people. Short-term plans. Okay, as I've said, short-term plans thing are just 30 days. You have not told me why it is that renewing a 30-day plan is insufficient and renewing a 1-year plan is the magic thing which unlocks insurance people between jobs. No analysis there. What I've told you is that there's a danger to expanding those short-term plans because they become the norm. And when those short-term plans become the norm, it means that insurance companies get the ability to routinely disqualify people from those plans as they get sick. You say that small businesses will need cheaper premiums. Well, yeah, except if the cost of those cheaper premiums for small businesses is that half the people who they employ are basically not covered because they are sick with things which the coverage which the insurance thing no longer covers, then that's not good. Yeah, small businesses might have to pay a little bit less, but if they're doing so by saying, oh, well, look, we'll just trade away maternity because 70% of our employees are men, what happens to 30% of which are women? And that is at the very end of your point, what customization means. It means shunting off people who actually need the insurance. And you have not given me
a plan for what is going to be good for those people who are actually sick. When you conceded that people should stop pay for the FDA despite the fact that it covers products which they never end up buying, you conceded your principle and it is worse for everyone. I win the debate.